From then on, the two began to wander through the subspace like ordinary siblings in search of something together. Luncha's steps were slow due to fatigue, but after regaining her senses, she was gradually able to feel the different energy lingering in the subspace. When I was lost in madness, I couldn't feel it at all, but now that I've regained my senses, I can feel the chaos and other energies in the subspace more clearly. There might be a reason why the subspace broke. The other energy Luncha spoke of was mana. Even when Jean tried to sharpen his senses, he couldn't feel that mana as Luncha could. It was because the chaos was too dense. If Jean had to find Valeria alone, without Luncha's help, it would have been like finding a needle in a haystack. Is Hister seriously injured? Yes. There's nothing more I can say except I'm sorry. You didn't do it in your right mind, elder sister. As long as she's alive, she can recover somehow. The problem is if she accepted the chaos, as I said when I was out of my mind. If not, she wouldn't have survived. My sword pierced her chest. As I said before, the magic I saw initially didn't have the energy of chaos. Even if the record magic was deployed before she was injured, the magic would have to be altered or lost if Hister was tainted by chaos. It's not your fault, so don't worry too much. You said that even if it were you, you wouldn't be able to reject the nanny. But if it were you, you would have chosen better than I did. No. More than that, if the prophet was here to recover Sir Paidler from the grave, then you didn't come here to track Hister in the first place, elder sister. I was surprised that the knights guarding the outside gave me her hair. Hister found knights several times while searching for a grave. Perhaps that's when she got her hair. I've been replacing Sir Paidler since Ronald Zippel lost her. The day Ronald lost Valeria, Luncha hadn't yet been consumed by chaos, nor had she become the master of the subspace in place of Paidler. From the beginning, Luncha wasn't chasing Hister but happened to cross paths with Valeria while searching for Timar's grave. Instead, Valeria gained an advantage from Luncha's years of searching. Valeria obtained a decisive clue that the grave was in Caldron's snowy field by observing Luncha's exploration. It seems there were separate groups searching for Timar's grave and tracking Hister. You were in the former, elder sister. Yes. Before coming to the subspace, I never received orders to kill or capture Hister. I suspected those orders were given to the Black Knights and the First Division of the Black Sword Association. Luncha's attack on Valeria in the grave was purely because she was unable to control her bloodthirsty madness. It wasn't due to any order given to her. Jean now understood the situation. The reason Valeria hurried into the grave without leaving any contact with Tychon. Rosa and the prophet must have thought elder sister Luncha would be reluctant to pursue Valeria. Moreover, they were planning to make my sister the master of the subspace anyway, so they let her find the grave to avoid unnecessary resentment. In other words, Rosa and the prophet are aware of the bond between Luncha and Jean. In particular, Rosa judged that Luncha could become Jin's ally at any moment since she observed the changes in Luncha after Jin's patriarchal declaration. Therefore, as Rosa, the best option was to use Luncha as much as possible and then tie her in the grave. Only a few people possessed a pure and strong soul that could replace Paidler. If Luna had been in the Garden of Swords and had a weakness like Lisham, Rosa wouldn't have hesitated to use Luna to pull out Paidler. The time in the subspace and the human world flow differently. That's why Jean felt more anxious as time passed. But he didn't show it outwardly because he knew Luncha was doing her best with her broken body. And Luncha would have to be alone for a while when Jean left the grave, trapped in this lonely and terrible space, mired in the madness of chaos. It was uncertain when Jean would return to her. It was also impossible to know how long it would take the chaos purification device to resolve the total invasion. And there were many chances that Rosa would strengthen the borders of Caldron's snowfields after today. While walking, Jean told his sister what had happened to him all this time. When Luncha learned about the events in La Ferosa, she laughed cheerfully as if she felt envy. But when she heard about the events Jean had experienced, she became very serious. I can't even imagine how painful it must have been for you to fight Sir Paidler and those engulfed by chaos. It must have been terrible, including Sir Ron and Sir Paidler and now me. Of course, it's painful. But just as we're having a friendly conversation as siblings, I'll also restore Sir Paidler to his original state. Just like when I overcame chaos with the late Ron Nim. I think I know why elder sister Luna admired you so much. I wish I had gotten closer to you a little earlier. I didn't get closer to you earlier either, did I? Of course, we both liked each other in our hearts after the patriarchal declaration. This feels awkward after so long. But, now that I think about it, didn't you say the weapon used to enter here was the sword of a knight named Hito? Yes. Elena also said an object was needed to exchange Sir Paidler with me. However, unlike the sword used as a key, it seemed to be a one-time consumable item. She didn't say there was only one, but she explained it as a consumable item. Perhaps Hito's sword and the items the Prophet used with you and Sir Paidler are related to the old run candle. In my case, I interacted with Hito's sword with shadow energy, and you must have interacted with the Prophet's item and chaos. I don't know why Zippel's monster butler has something like that. He also seemed unaware of the sword's true nature. If Zippel also knew the sword's identity, they would have handled it more specially. Then, did Hister also have items related to the old run candle? She used nothing but her mana. How did Valeria manage to enter this grave? That was the question that had been bothering Jean all along. Considering my case and the Prophet's, even if it's related to the old run candle, it's unlikely to enter the grave without being able to use shadow energy or chaos. Or maybe the recording device of Soderette I gave her became the key. Jean didn't know until Valeria herself told him. Lunch's steps were getting faster. She hadn't regained her strength in the slightest, but she was trying to find Hister a second faster while Jean took care of her. I think we're getting closer. The strange feeling coming through the subspace is getting stronger. Luncia pointed her finger towards a distant empty space. There it is. I did my best, but I can't walk anymore. She was unable to recover her body after being disconnected from the subspace. Luncia's legs were now completely stiff like a statue and couldn't move at all. Go younger. I'll wait here. Don't reconnect me and the subspace. I'll attack you immediately. I understand, elder sister. As Jean approached the point where Luncia pointed, his heart beat with anxiety. He could now feel Valeria's mana like Luncia. Her mana was like a fading flame, infinitely weak and unstable. Valeria. Jean called her name as he stopped walking. There was no response or reaction. Jean called several more times, closed his eyes, and focused his senses and shadow energy. Thanks to recovering some shadow energy while walking, Jean could unleash the ultimate shadow sword technique only once. He felt he had to penetrate the subspace himself to confirm it. I have to make sure Valeria isn't hurt when I cut through the space. Jean measured the depth by reading the faint mana flow. He quickly closed the distance and swung his shadow blade without hesitation. Slash. The space opened. No! It wasn't Luncia's voice. That voice belonged to Neru of the cat tribe. Neru? Jean never thought Neru would emerge from beyond the space. Neru extended her short arms and bit her lips. It was a gesture people make unconsciously to protect something. Jean? Are you really Jean Runcandle? Jean was speechless, staring at the person Neru protected behind him, Valeria Hister, who was trapped in an ice shell. As Luncia said, a large black scar was visible in the middle of Valeria's chest. Valeria! As Jean entered the space, Neru patted his chest. Jean, Valeria sealed herself. The wound was too deep, so there was no other way. Alive. Although he expected it because she still had mana, something hot struck his throat when he saw Valeria with his own eyes. Then, Neru, have you been with Valeria all this time? Yes, since the first time I came here. Luncia Runcandle doesn't know. What about Luncia Runcandle? Perhaps the person behind you? It's too complicated to explain. Anyway, let's get out of here, Neru. Judging by the amount of mana, the seal won't last long. Yes, I've already made an exit. Valeria couldn't move, so we couldn't leave. Neru pulled out the cat god's claw from her arm. While Neru immediately tried to use the claws to open the door leading out of the subspace, Jean turned to look at Luncia. She was waving her hand as if saying, "Go quickly." The two were reading each other's thoughts without speaking, just as they did in their first encounter after the patriarchal declaration. "I'll be back soon, elder sister. Return safely, little brother." The door leading out of the subspace opened, and Luncia stared for a while at the empty space where they had disappeared. Beyond the door was not the interior of the cave where they had entered the tomb, but a scene of the Cauldron snowfield. And Jean realized, as soon as they came out, that another urgent situation awaited them. "I had expected this, but it seems quite a bit of time has passed outside." The landscape of the Cauldron snowfield had changed. The snow, which previously reached their knees, was now completely black, and the oppressive gray snowstorm had turned into a coal-black chaos. Is the entire snowfield dyed in chaos? There wasn't a single spot in sight that wasn't dark, and the chaotic snowstorm was so maddening that even those unaccustomed to it would probably lose their minds just by being exposed to it. Kihek, Kayak Dash. Moreover, the roars of the chaotic dragons shook the sky. When Jean looked up, the dragon was breathing black breath like an artillery bombardment towards the ground. On the ground, there were also knights consumed by chaos and monsters that could only be seen in the Black Sea, writhing back and forth. "Jean, I can't create more dimensional portals. You seem tired too. What should we do?" Naru was already struggling to stay still since Jean had discovered him. To open a dimensional portal requires a great amount of energy or the cat god's claws, but neither is available. "It's okay, Naru. I still have enough strength to break through this level of encirclement." And Jean paused, closing his eyes and focusing his senses. His senses detected other powers amidst the chaos filling the entire snowfield. Aura, mana, and demonic energy. They were undoubtedly the powers of those fighting to save them. "It seems there are people fighting to save us. If we join forces with them, we should be able to escape without any problems. I'll explain everything about you and Valeria after we escape and have some time to calm down." "Really? Did you tell your companions before entering the tomb?" "Not just my companions, but also Zippel and Kinselo, with whom I formed a temporary alliance." "Zippel and Kinselo? They are good friends to have in a situation like this." "Nya." Jean summoned Shuri, placed Naru on her, and tied up the sealed Valeria. The non-chaotic energy did not gather in one place. North, east, west. Jean decided it would be better to make his location known to them and gather them in one place if possible. If we gather and someone like Rosa or someone of her level comes and we can't escape, it will be a problem. Jean did not perceive too many allies. That meant that the allies who came to save Jean consisted of only a small number of elites from each faction. Therefore, Jean decided that the best course of action would be to first make his presence known to the weaker allies. Of course, those Jean had to find first were the Taikanese. Since Talaris was injured, it was likely that the elite of Taikan was relatively weak. Depending on the situation, it might be better for Jean to rescue them and then join forces with other factions. To the east. The most familiar energy was in the east. When Shuri began to run, the eyes of all the nearby monsters focused on them. Before Jean could even unleash his sword or magic, Shuri shot a mana ray that disintegrated the demons without a trace. Nya. Fortunately, as they headed east, they did not encounter any remaining chaotic forces. In less than 15 minutes of running, Jean was able to reunite with the Taikan companions who were fighting. Valka's Nim. Valka's and Amala, Lata and Yulian. From Taikan, for people were in charge of searching the Cauldron snowfield. "My lord, old Valkas, protect the lord." "Oh, and who is this cute little one?" My lord, you have rescued Valeria." As Jean feared, they were struggling quite a bit. The corpses of chaotic entities that seemed to be monsters and knights were literally forming black rivers and mountains around them. "We don't have time, Valkas Nim. Please explain the situation first." "It has been 5 days since you entered the tomb, my lord. The Garden of Swords has not directly attacked Taikan or any other faction, but the Cauldron snowfield has been completely contaminated. Despite the lack of transcendent chaotic entities, they were struggling due to the endless waves of chaos they faced after arriving at the Cauldron Snowfield. It's fortunate that there wasn't a direct attack from the Garden of Swords. Were there any casualties? There were no casualties among the Vamal Alliance. The Allies probably had a similar situation, though they might have lost some living golems and Plutonian-type golems. According to Valka's report, transcendent chaotic entities did not appear on the side of the Vamal Alliance. Instead, monsters at the level of inner core monsters had been appearing throughout the snowfield for several days. If Rosal knew that I escaped from the tomb, she might send some powerful beings immediately. How did you decide to escape after finding me? We decided to use the dimensional door of the leader. All right, let's go. As soon as Jean joined them, the mood of the Taiken group changed. It wasn't just because Jin's well-being was confirmed. Despite being nearly exhausted from opening the tomb and fighting Luncia, Jean had no difficulty sweeping away the ordinary chaotic beings that appeared every few seconds with the flames emanating from his hands. He tried to make the knights suffer as little as possible before meeting their end. Kinselo and Zippel were positioned to the northwest. Shuri, carrying the entire group, grew increasingly anxious as they could encounter other forces. The first they encountered were Hito and Sandra, who had separated from Zippel and the others while searching for Jean. Naturally, it was because Sandra caused a commotion. She insisted that she couldn't rescue Jean in such an underwhelming manner. Zippel was seriously searching for Jean, and had left with Hito to act separately as soon as they arrived back at the snowfield. Dear, is that really Jean? It is Jean, right, Hito? Correct. It is the 12th flag bearer. So please stop pulling on my clothes, milady. I told you we had to move separately. The fools of my clan still don't know my Jean has returned. Milady and I just found out. We didn't even come to find him. It was the 12th flag bearer who found us. Jean. Sandra ran towards Jean, intending to hug him on Shuri, but Jean unconsciously dodged her. Thanks to that, Sandra could only fall on Valeria, who was tied behind Jean. Kong. The sound of ice clashing against someone's head echoed throughout the area. Damn it! If I had been a bit quicker, I could have hugged you. Ha! This woman is so precious that she almost made us disappear from the world. I want to destroy her. No, Sandra. For now, you should be glad that Jean has returned safely. With that, even Sandra climbed onto Shuri's back. Since Shuri possessed tremendous power that could destroy a mountain given time, the weight of so many people wasn't heavy, but sometimes Shuri turned her head as if uncomfortable. Due to his large size, Hito couldn't ride on Shuri's back and hung from her side. Although it didn't look good, Hito seemed unconcerned. It seems you've made it, 12th flag bearer. Yes, Tower Guardian. I'll show you my gratitude when we return. I'm also curious about your sword. I think you're the same Tower Guardian. Jean and me. Thanks to you too, Sandra. If you had told me you were very grateful, I would have extended the 2 days left of the woman trapped in the ice's life. But now I'll aim myself. Thank you very much. Kia. That's how it should be. Jean, Valeria, Neru, Valkas, Amala, Lada, Yulian, Sandra, and Hito rode on Shuri as she once again moved forward with vigor. However, it wasn't long before Shuri had no choice but to pick a new person. Dear, who is that guy who looks dead? Who is he? He's a demon named Ranka Halovice, Sandra. Ranka Halovice. Judging by his state, he seems to have become Furious Ranka, but has collapsed from the exhaustion of dealing with inner core class chaos monsters for several days. There's not enough space. Should we leave them? No, if we take them with us, I'll be able to get closer to Jean and the ice piece will be further away. Hito. Whoosh. Hito caught Ranka and threw him onto Shuri's back. Valkas roughly tied him with a rope. In this way, more and more people continued to board Shuri or hang on to her. Bouvard Gaston? He's not even combat personnel. Why did Kinselo bring him? Hito. Whoosh. Aina's Caligo? Oh, no wonder Bouvard is here. Hito. Whoosh. Clank clank. I don't know his name, but he seems to be the leader of a White Wolf tribe assault team or something. Hito. Whoosh. By the time they got near Orgel, Shuri was carrying about 20 people running like fruits. Sandra, who was stuck to Jean, seemed almost flattened like a pancake, and Shuri seemed really tired. And the personnel clinging to Jean and Shuri, in front of Orgel, realized why they had only been able to deal with the chaotic bodies until now. Orgel and Zephyrin were dealing with Lionel, Stam, and the old unknown Black Knights. Orgel, what a wonderful being. I know it wouldn't be the end of Lionel, but I didn't expect him to appear already. And all these corpses seemed to be transcendent chaotic entities. However, Orgel looked tired. As soon as he saw Jean, he smiled and waved. Oh, just when I thought it was my limit, you appear at a good time, Jean Runcandle. It seems you've found your lover. No, was it me whom Jean saved? You're saying something wrong. Now that the truly unruly guy was about to come out, that's great. Let them flee immediately, Orgel said while deflecting Lionel's sword. Lionel was panting, having lost an arm. You think you can flee, demon? As soon as Lionel finished speaking, the steel door opened between the group and Orgel. At the same time, the chaos door opened on the opposite side. By the way, Orgel, what's with Zippel? I never thought Runcandle would ask to take Zippel with him. It's better to tell those friends to return on their own. Well, even if it's just a temporary alliance, we are still allies, so shouldn't we at least inform them of the escape plan? Let's go first. That person coming out of that door looks really strong. Milady. Zippel is the name of their clan. So what? Jean looks about to die anyway. The one coming out of the chaos door was none other than Paidler Runcandle. Orgel also raised his head as if to say, Look at that! And Jean nodded. I'll shoot a signal flare. Good idea. Shuri to the steel door. Jean. Runcandle. Paidler spoke in a dark voice, just before he came out of the chaos door. Fortunately, Shuri managed to throw herself through the steel door with the many people she carried, unscathed. Orgel and Zephyrin followed her example and ran to the steel door, and Paidler could only watch them disappear through the door. Vamal Alliance, Tychon Free State Palace. The Vamal Alliance and their temporary allies remained tense after Jin's safe return and Valeria's rescue. Although her wounds continued to be a concern for Tychon, there was no way to heal her wounds, even if Jean mobilized the abilities of all the healers, medical staff, and the cat tribe of their allies, as well as Holy King Lonnie, who was dedicated to treating Talaris. Phew! After leaving the medical room, Jean took a breath as if he were tired. He was infusing mana into Valeria's seal every day. It required a magician of at least Octavia's level to maintain Valeria's complicated magic from the outside, so it was only possible for Jean in Tychon. Even if Jin's mana reached the 10-star level, the external injection of mana caused too much mental fatigue. This meant Jean couldn't exert all his energy while keeping Valeria alive. Valeria Hister. I always felt she was a remarkable person. As far as I know, most magicians can't maintain any magic while unconscious. Not just magicians, humans can't do anything while unconscious either. Cirrus. Cirrus patted Jean on the shoulder. I'm sorry I can't help with the power of the Hidden Palace. Don't say that. I've always received grace from the Hidden Palace. It wasn't possible to replace Valeria's magic with the seal of the Hidden Palace either. The same applied even if Talaris, instead of Cirrus, were in a recovered state and tried to do it herself. Ha! Qual, who had been sitting in front of the hospital room all the time, sighed as soon as he saw Jean. The ashtray beside him was filled with cigarette butts, and his face was so gaunt that he looked like a dying person. Qual viewed Valeria as a genius inventor who would carry the future of the world along with him. In a way, he even believed Valeria had greater talent than he did and was convinced that if Valeria died without recovering, the world's development would regress hundreds of years. Beyond this, Qual was the closest person to Valeria among her companions. Over the past 3 years, Qual had formed the deepest bond with her. If it were possible, I would sacrifice my life to save her. How can this be so hopeless? even with the abilities of Holy King and Talaris Indorma. It's Indorma, not Kindorma. How can a supposed genius get a letter wrong every time? Are you just mocking me? Even in this situation. It doesn't matter if it's Kindorma or Indorma now. Without Valeria, all the research we've done together and the future of the world is just darkness. Darkness. If you were incompetent, you would have died 100 times, and 99 of those times would have been by my hand. Then just kill me and save her. While delaying the world's progress by a few hundred years was daunting, Jean also felt a sense of hopelessness when considering they needed to prepare for the next battle with Rosa without Valeria. Above all, the figure in the hospital room was Valeria, the person who saved his past self, who had been disabled. I'll find a way somehow, Dr. Quall. The only way is to obtain numerous blood or tears. Don't these temporary allies have at least one of those? I don't know about the tears, but they might have the blood. Numerous blood. It was the legacy of the god of hope that had saved Jean and Dante in the past. At present, there was no other place to place their hopes. The chaos mixed in the affected area is at a level that can be resolved with a purifier. As long as the seal is maintained as it is now, it won't spread any further. However, the fatal wounds in the vital organs, including the heart, could only be treated with the power of a god. I also have that in mind. Let's first wait for Kinzelo's response. Kinzelo. Do you know when Demon King Orgel will wake up? Wouldn't it be better to just talk to Zippel first? Due to the battle in Cauldron Snowfield, Orgel fell back into a state of sleep. From the perspective of Kinzelo's members, it was like a nightmare, as Orgel occasionally coughed up blood while asleep. Kinzelo is much friendlier with us than Zippel. And since Rosa is not yet attacking outside of Huphester, there's no urgent need for me to enter the battle. So let's wait for Kinzelo first. If they couldn't get help from Kinzelo, they would have to seek assistance from Zippel, which was not ideal for several reasons. First, Zippel had invested the most manpower in Cauldron Snowfield, and everyone else present at the snowfield had escaped, except for Zippel. As a result, Zippel lost about 100 unfinished living golems, and Octavia and Cadden were wounded again by the transcendent chaos beings, Paidler Runcandle and others. While it was true that Orgel had truly exhausted all his power, from Zippel's perspective, it wasn't a matter that could be easily understood and overlooked. But they had stayed in Tychon and returned to Zippel without revealing this fact, following Hito's opinion. In other words, Zippel didn't know that Hito and Sandra escaped with Jean. It's frustrating. If we all work together, someone might suffer losses, but Zippel simply gets angry. In fact, Zippel had yet to respond to the letter sent by Tychon and Kinzelo after the Cauldron Snowfield incident, showing signs of anger. Although the temporary alliance won't break due to this incident, there will inevitably be some tension. Zippel may not have responded to communication with Tychon and Kinzelo because they're angry, but they might also be in the process of organizing compensations or other demands. If they ask for some inconvenient requests in exchange for numerous legacy, what will you do? It will depend on the specific request. Why do you ask such a stupid question? Are you so dumb that you can't even remember the name? It's better to accept any request, even if they ask to return the spacetime device. Valeria is more important. Dr. Quall, let's go there to smoke. You know how wise our Lord is. He will definitely take everything he can from the temporary alliance, so let's not worry. Come on, let's go. Jet has brought the best cigarettes from Mila Mountain. Jet skillfully took Quall away, and Jean got lost in his thoughts. Despite rescuing Valeria, he still couldn't think of a sharp solution. Young master, please take a rest. Your face doesn't look good. That's right, my lord. Zippel couldn't make such unreasonable demands. Right? Kashmir, Enya, and other companions approached and offered comforting words. As soon as Jean stepped out into the front yard of Tychon Palace to clear his mind for a moment, a report came from the seven-colored peacocks. Your Majesty, Jean Nim, Kinzelo's first flying ship, Grenil, is approaching Tychon. Even from afar, Jean and his group could see the silhouette of Grenil. Grant them immediate entry and bring them here. Yes. Jean and his companions naturally thought that executives like Bishkal and Barak had come to visit to report on the leader's situation and to discuss how to improve the relationship with Zippel in the future. Surprisingly, Orgel descended directly along with Zephyrin, Bishkal, Margiela, Bouvard, and Ranka from Granil. Orgel's nebulous body was weaker than before. Orgel, has your recovery finished? Not really, cough, cough. Master, here's some water. Thank you, Zephyrin. Orgel was in a state where he could collapse again at any moment, much less recover. Zephyrin wiped the blood from him with an annoyed expression. That's why I told you to just report by letter or summon Jean Runcandle to our side. Cough, cough. Ah, really? For a while, Orgel coughed like an old, sick human. Once his coughing calmed down a bit, he exchanged some brief, formal greetings before getting to the point. I came here to answer your questions about Hister, Jean Runcandle. Jin's eyes widened. I see your expression changes. This is quite interesting, cough, ahem. I would like to enjoy this a bit more, but I can't. If it's enough for you to come in person, could it be that you brought numerous blood? If we had it, would we give it to you? Yes, we'd never give it to you. Bouvard and Aines shouted at the same time. First of all, numerous blood is useless. Without the tears, Hister can't be saved with numerous blood. How can you be so sure? How many drops of that blood do you think I've used in my long existence? Then why did you come all the way here to tell us this? And in your current condition? Because I need to examine Hister myself in detail. I could have summoned you as Zephyrin did, but if you were absent when Zippel found Tychon, things would get complicated. It would seem like only you and we were meeting separately. So someone from Zippel will come soon. Orgel had already contacted Zippel before coming to Tychon to discuss the situation in Caldron's snowfield. Looking at my condition, even Zippel would have to admit we didn't do it on purpose. Rather, I think we should hurry and check on Hister before they arrive. Orgel wasn't in a situation to beat around the bush. Jean guided him to Valeria's hospital room. What do you want to confirm about Hister? The level of opening of the complete mana body. If Hister is in a well-opened state, there's a way to save her without numerous tears. Orgel placed his hand on Valeria's seal for a few minutes and closed his eyes. Soon he nodded and reassured Jean. She has far exceeded my expectations. If this is the case, this time, Jean wiped the blood. It's possible to treat her without any cost. How? Orgel answered Jin's question as follows. You can take Hister to Zippel's holy place. If she spends some time there, this woman will fully recover. The holy land of Zippel? Jean had never heard of such a place, neither in his past life nor in the current one. Yes, the holy land of Zippel. The fully open mana body that has almost been opened is no different from semi-immortals as long as they can use that space. Just being there can heal all wounds. The existence of such a space is one thing, but the fact that a fully opened mana body can perform such incredible regeneration there is like a lie. A lie? Is that what you're saying? For now, yes. Believe it or not, it's up to you, Jean Runcandle. But, there is no other way to obtain numerous tears otherwise. I'm telling you now, we don't have numerous tears. You can confirm this through Uria. I said, for now. If you explain a bit more, I think I can believe it. After going through all the trouble of bringing my sick body here and showing you the way, do I have any reason to be treated like a liar from the start? Jean chuckled at those words. Orgel, is it necessary for the knowledgeable to spout nonsense? You wouldn't have come looking for me in such a pathetic state just for the sake of the Vamal alliance, would you? Jean threw Orgel's blood-stained handkerchief in the trash. You must have rushed here because you'd be in trouble if Hister died. Demon King Orgel, to restore your manipulated history to its original state, Hister's power is absolutely necessary. Am I wrong? Orgel shrugged. I didn't expect such a reaction from a simple throwaway comment. Yes, you're right. Leaving aside my history, Hister's ability is absolutely necessary to counter the evil god. Then stop spouting nonsense and say something worthwhile. Swoosh. Suddenly, A small steel door appeared in the middle of the hospital room. Unlike usual, where the door transported the user or the target through dimensional travel, this door revealed a green landscape. A bright green sea? It also looks like a desert. You can see it that way. That landscape, is it the Holy Land of Zippel you mentioned? Yes, but this is not its current appearance. I'm sharing my memories with you. It's from a few hundred years ago, but it probably hasn't changed. I've never seen mana of this color. It's not mana. It's a power that has no name. I call it residual energy. Residual energy? Does that mean it's the power left by the existence beyond the gods you mentioned before? Orgel nodded. What does that have to do with the fully opened mana body? The fully open mana body is the only one among humans that reacts to residual energy. It can heal any physical damage, including diseases, wounds, and scars, as long as the residual energy is present. This is only possible when the fully open mana body reaches a certain level or higher. Is there any special reason why only the fully opened mana body reacts to residual energy? Well, I don't know the reason either. I just assume that it's because some will of that existence is embedded among the owners of fully open mana bodies. Perhaps the fully open mana body is a blessing that was only allowed to those who possessed that being's will in the first place. According to his explanation, the residual energy could heal any wound except for aging and mental shock, but only for the owners of fully open mana bodies. Then, a vague human figure appeared within the steel door's scenery. Although unclear, it was easy to see that it was missing an arm. That memory is vague, so it's not being shared correctly. Maybe it's a fully opened mana body like Hister's. The person in the landscape lay down in the middle of the Holy Land. Crazy. After a while, Jean could see the person's amputated arm beginning to regenerate. The residual energy of the Holy Land and the person's mana mixed, creating a magnificent iridescent light and bubbles. Why do you look so deep in thought? Do you think I'm showing you a fake landscape? Of course, Jean thought that possibility existed. Given the powers Orgel had shown so far, it seemed possible. But Jean decided to trust Orgel, because if true, there couldn't be anything better. Orgel had no reason to lie now. Even so, the reason Jean was troubled for a while was because another thought came to mind. I think not only will you have a fully open mana body, but you'll also be able to recover if you go there. And right now, you don't know the location of the Holy Land. So, in exchange for saving Hister this time, you hope I'll find out the location of the Holy Land for you. Am I wrong? A slight smile appeared on Orgel's lips. Sometimes you and I communicate very well. That's right, Cough. Aren't you relying too much on me just because we communicate well? Even if I find the location, I have no intention of sharing it with you, Orgel. If you regain all your power, it won't be different from another evil god awakening before me and the people of the world. It's sad you think that of me. Anyway, if you find the location, at some point we can make a deal if your perception of me changes or if I have something you can't refuse. That's a rather ominous future. Zippel will never make a deal with anyone regarding the location of the Holy Land. No matter what. In the first place, I would do the same. But this time, they have to accept a deal to save Hister's life, right? That's correct. Zippel probably wants to save Hister more than you do right now. So, isn't this a pretty convincing story? If I assume everything you said is true, then it's very convincing. But I don't think Zippel will reveal the location of the Holy Land so easily. Threats, persuasion, and seduction are more your area of expertise than mine. Besides, you have Hister, Zippel's greatest weakness, so you should be able to negotiate favorable terms. I'll help more if I can. Jean met Orgel's gaze. The bright light and bubbles produced when residual energy reacts with the owner of a fully open mana body. You can use it as bargaining material. That would give Zippel something to investigate. As expected, you understand me immediately. Yes, that alone would be a significant reward for Zippel. Of course, they'll demand more than that. Cough. You'll regret it if you refuse. Jean was about to pull the handkerchief he had thrown into the trash but grabbed a new one from the drawer and wiped the blood. You gave the information because you wanted something, but let's thank you. Hyuk. Yes. Sure. It seems you're thankful. The two talked for a while about how to handle the situations when Zippel came. By the time the conversation ended, Jet found the hospital room. Milord, people from Zippel are also coming. The Kozak ship has arrived. Okay, Jet. I'll be out in a minute. Yes. The leaders of the Zippel side who arrived in Taiken were Octavia, Ronald, and Cadden. Guido and Sandra were nowhere to be seen. Cadden transformed into human form, with bandages wrapping around his entire body. He still hadn't recovered from the wounds he suffered during the attack from the Garden of Swords. They were not wounds that could heal easily. He was hit hardest by the chaos emitted by Rosa and Ram and was injured again in the Cauldron snowfield. In fact, it was almost miraculous that he could even move now. Jean faced them calmly, but inwardly he rejoiced at Cadden's condition. Looks like you desperately need a chaos purification device. Unlike Jean, Cadden had been openly showing his anger since entering the Taiken Palace. Are you here? Kashmir greeted his companions directly. Are you here? Yes, we are here. Damn bastards, we formed an alliance just a few days ago. You left us alone in the Cauldron snowfield? Don't you think it's too stupid? Even if it's temporary. You seem very angry, Cadden. Cadden nearly rolled his eyes at hearing Jin's voice. The bandages wrapping his body burned intensely, revealing his wounds. 12th flag bearer. By the way, wouldn't it be correct to think that it's normal? What? The day Rosa's hidden power was revealed. Why did you and Kinselo launch a full attack against Runcandle? Let me guess. It was because you were sure there would be a decisive battle against the entire Garden of Swords. That's why you took the opportunity and tried to destroy me and the Garden of Swords. Ha, then we weren't temporary allies. It means we were enemies. Do you think we're in the same position now? I admit it. That's why I forgave that bastard's behavior and accepted you as allies. But now that you've come, you don't even ask about the circumstances and act recklessly. It's unpleasant to see you behave as quickly as a rogue. Do you think we abandoned you deliberately? Look there. What do you mean? Cadden was speechless as he followed Jin's finger to the entrance of the Taiken Palace. There he saw Orgel, leaning on Zephyrin and coughing up blood with every step. Wow. You made it. Cadden cough. At that moment we could escape through Orgel's metal door. How are we supposed to escape with Zippel in such a state? Even one of the 10 great knights, Paidler Runcandle, who you dealt with, was being summoned right in front of us. Sorry. For that. Ugh. Cadden. The situation was really urgent at that time. If you want, here's a 1,000-year contractor you can consult. Cadden had nothing more to say while watching Orgel, who kept collapsing and being lifted by Kinselo members. Of course, Cadden wasn't a fool, so he had expected the situation to be urgent to some extent, but he didn't know Orgel would be in such a state. Moreover, even though the Zippel side suffered damage, no significant figures died, and the temporary alliances achieved their goals. We rescued Hister, and I survived. Isn't that a pretty good outcome? As Cadden tried to say something, Ronald stepped forward and made a slight bow. We think so too, but please understand that there is some emotional aspect to it, Sir Jean. Please understand a little of Cadden Nim's anger. I will. What is Hister's condition? We received some news from Kinselo's side, but we don't know the details. She is barely alive. Orgel says she can recover if she goes to your holy land. Ronald blinked for a few seconds, as if asking, how do you know that? What did you just say? It's as you heard, Sir Ronald. The Hister needs the holy land of Zippel to recover. Ronald's eyebrows furrowed as Jean responded naturally. Jean had not seen him display such emotions during their previous encounters. Cadden and Octavia blinked in disbelief. They never expected to hear such shocking news at that moment, when they had come to negotiate a temporary alliance. Sir Jean, there are many ears listening right now. Did you think it was appropriate to bring up such a topic here? Asked Ronald. I didn't know it was such a big secret. The leader of Kinselo mentioned it casually. Jean replied, and Ronald glared at Orgel. Orgel barely managed to stand up, waving his hands apologetically. A moment of silence ensued. Meanwhile, Jean asked all his companions to leave, except for himself and Kashmir, leaving only Orgel and Zephyrin by Kinzelo's side. "Sir Orgel, what were you thinking when you did this?" Ronald asked. Cough. "The master is not in a condition to continue speaking, so let me answer on his behalf, Zippels," said Zephyrin, lifting Orgel. "First of all, I hope the members of Zippel do not get too excited and listen to my story. I understand that Sir Jean brought up a delicate topic without much thought, which may have caused frustration." "Frustration? Is that all?" interrupted Octavia, causing Zephyrin to narrow her eyes. "Please don't interrupt me. Let it be clear that this is not a request, but a warning. My master knew of the existence of the Holy Land even before you called it that, and he used to be its caretaker. So you acquired it when my master lost his power," said Zephyrin firmly. "Are you claiming ownership then?" Ronald's voice calmed again. Jean thought Ronald's composure was impressive but suspected there was more. It seems he didn't come here without considering the Holy Land. Perhaps showing displeasure was part of the plan. "That's not true. If there comes a time when we can reclaim it by force after defeating a public enemy, then who knows? But right now that place clearly belongs to the Zippel. However, it's hard to endure being treated as if I don't even have the right to speak about what I know. What will you do if you can't endure it, Demon Dragon?" It seems the successor of the Fire Dragon Tricalnes is curious about that, so continue if you wish. When Tricalnes' name emerged, Cadden's eyes widened. "How do you know about Tricalnes?" "It was quite a satisfying meal, as I recall." Normally, Cadden would have raged at that moment, ready to kill Zephyrin. However, the Fire Dragon Tricalnes was the king of the fire dragons before Cadden and the most perfect creature of Shinu. Nevertheless, there were no stories left of Tricalnes in the world, and even Cadden himself would struggle to remember his name if he didn't concentrate. The reason was none other than the fact that Tricalnes' death was the greatest shame of Shinu and the fire dragons. It was Shinu's will and the old Zippels doing to erase Tricalnes' history to cover up that shame. "Don't tell me she killed Tricalnes? This demon dragon?" Zephyrin smiled coldly, as if she saw through Cadden's thoughts. "Maybe Cadden is right. If it's hard to believe, ask your god directly, Cadden. I'm not sure if Shinu can restore that memory, but—" Cadden turned his gaze away from Zephyrin. He didn't remember the moment Tricalnes died, nor did any terrifying memories come to mind. However, an inexplicable fear slowly crept into Cadden's heart. "Even if I had faced you in your prime, I wouldn't have been so scared. The reason you don't know me well is because I couldn't fight you back then." Jean was recalling the day Zephyrin's true identity was first revealed on Black King Mountain and the words she had said to Mirakan. Did Cadden drop his tail in 11? Jean couldn't easily imagine her dominance just by looking at Orgel, who was hunched like an invalid, and Zephyrin who had shown herself so far. However, it was evident that Cadden was visibly shocked even when speaking disrespectfully of Shinu. What surprised Octavia most was Cadden's reaction. Since Cadden had stepped back, she could no longer express her anger towards Zephyrin. "Well, it seems Cadden's curiosity has been satisfied. Shall we return to the main topic now?" Zephyrin gestured towards Jean. "The atmosphere has soured for no reason. I didn't bring up this story with that intention, so I apologize to both parties." Sir Jean saved Zippel's face. "It's an important matter. If you intend to keep being so sarcastic, wake up Orgel, Zephyrin. I don't think we're here to have a war of nerves. That's why humans aren't very good. Is it because your lives are short that you lack courage? Anyway, Sir Ronald." "Speak, Jean Nim." "Hister's survival is necessary for us to eliminate the common enemy. If it's difficult to open Zippel's Holy Land, at least provide the Tear of Numerous. I don't think we can even attach the words Tear of Numerous to it, and we don't possess the Tear of Numerous either. Let me take a look at Hister first." The task of showing Valeria, who had lost consciousness, to Zippel. Even merely doing so made Jean feel like he was committing a sin, but he had no choice to save her. Since her appearance had already been exposed to Zippel, there was no reason to be cautious and hide it. After going to the hospital room and looking at Valeria, the leaders of the Zippel side or pointed with their foreheads. Although they already knew the information, seeing it with their own eyes was another thing. I understand why you first asked for the tier of numerous. Fatigue is an inevitable state. Did Sir Jean retain the seal? Impressive. Only a few people in Zippel can maintain such a seal. What shall we do then? If you can't open the Holy Land and there are no tiers, then what? Just by exposing Hister to Zippel, I've already suffered a loss, but I'll bury it and take care of it myself. Jean wanted to say that if you're not going to open the Holy Land, you should leave immediately. This is not a decision we can make on our own, Sir Jean. Our side and Kinslow are participating in the meeting with responsible individuals who can make an instant decision on the spot always. I know. I'll return immediately to report this situation to my father and get a response. We'll be waiting for good news. Although everyone is trying to save Hister for the temporary alliance as a whole, or more precisely, for their own desires, a reasonable compensation will probably be needed for this, Sir Jean. It took 3 days for the Zippel leaders to return to Tychon. This time, Ronald came alone with some assistants without Cadden or Octavia. My father also said there was no other way but to open the Holy Land. He allowed us to bring Hister to the Holy Land. What are your demands? First, only Hister can enter the Holy Land. Second, as compensation for this incident, each alliance shares some information about purification and chaos control with Zippel. This must be accompanied by the presence of the 1,000-year contractor. I refuse. Jean flatly rejected the proposal as if he had nothing more to hear. Well, then we won't be able to save Hister. I heard Orgel say that if a full mana body goes to its holy land, it leaves some kind of mana trace. Zippel can receive considerable rewards just by studying that trace. We don't know how much damage that research will cause us after the alliance dissolves. Jean shrugged. Who benefits more from Hister's injury? Zippel. We all want Hister alive, but Zippel can even investigate. So please don't be too greedy. If it breaks this time, I'll put aside all the talk about Hister. Don't push your luck. Agreed. If so, we'll open the Holy Land without conditions, but you must agree to move with senses blocked as much as possible to avoid exposing the Holy Land's location. Also, I don't want Jean Nim and Hister to have another escort. The requirements were just words Ronald had thrown out, and these words were based on the clan elders' opinions. Ronald wasn't happy with their opinions. I understand perfectly. When would be a good time to leave? If it suits you, we can leave right now. Since boarding the Kozak, Jean hadn't taken a single step in the windowless cabin. He merely clung tightly to the sealed Valeria and waited for the ship to stop. It hadn't been 5 days since the ship had reached its destination. Thank you for your hard work, Sir Jean. You may disembark now. As soon as Jean got off the ship, he realized he was inside a huge building. It was larger than the construction yard he had seen in the Soda Desert in the past. Ronald guided Jean for about 2 hours. When they reached a door inside the building, Ronald stopped walking. This is as far as I can guide you. After this, I can't access, so another person will assist you. Only 2 Zippels could freely enter and exit through the door. One was the Patriarch, Keliarch Zippel, and the second. Are you Jean Runcandle? The next Patriarch, Baradin Zippel, approached Jean from the other side. The friend he hadn't seen in about 3 years greeted him in a dry voice instead of the usual cheerful one. Follow me. I'll guide you to the Holy Land. Jean found Baradin's back very unfamiliar as he walked ahead through the door and saw a sword at Baradin's waist. Sword. At first glance, Baradin's hand lacked the calluses typical of those who wield swords. We couldn't send the young Patriarch, Jean Runcandle. I wonder what the reason is. That boy is no longer the Baradin Zippel you knew. Now! He's almost like a newborn. A newborn? Can you explain it in simpler terms, Spectre Captain? It literally means what I said. Currently, Baradin has lost all his language, knowledge, magic, habits, and memories. a conversation that Jean had with Octavia not long ago, during the first meeting of the Temporary Alliance. Yuria confirmed that all this was true. At the time of the first meeting of the Temporary Alliance, Baradin was really no different from a disabled person. Has something changed in Baradin during this short time? It was hard to even imagine that he seemed like a newborn, and Baradin was displaying a very businesslike and stable attitude. Jean even felt a certain sharpness in his steps as he walked at a moderate pace, and along with that, he sensed a familiar energy. Aura. It was at such a weak level that it didn't even reach 1 star, but it was definitely an aura. Curiously, there was only a tiny amount of mana compared to the aura. A magical swordsman. The premonition that the experiments with living golems that Zippel had been doing so far might have been to create a magical swordsman had already been brought up several years ago. However, Jean never expected to glimpse the result through Baradin at this moment, which could be the product of those experiments. Baradin Zippel. Why are you calling me? I heard that until recently you were in a state where all your memories were erased, and you couldn't do anything, but it seems your condition has suddenly improved. I've been able to live without anyone's help for about a week. Haven't you recovered any memories about me and Dante? Baradin stopped walking and turned to look back. Jean was slowly following him while holding Valeria, who was still sealed, in his arms. He couldn't walk fast. During the 5 days of flight, Jean had kept Valeria's seal uninterrupted, and he was still doing so now. His mana wasn't exhausted, but the mental energy consumption was too great. Jean was sweating. A lot of people have asked about you and the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle, said Baradin, moving next to Jean and placing his hand on Valeria's seal. As he did so, mana effortlessly flowed into the complex seal, even though he hadn't taken any special measures like Jean. I don't remember anything. Oh, really? Thanks to Baradin maintaining the seal, Jean was able to walk more comfortably. Jean didn't ask any questions about Baradin's abilities. But there's something I'm curious about. Why did so many people only talk about you or the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle, and not about clan members, when trying to find my memory? The two synchronized their steps. Why were you curious? It's strange, isn't it? I don't know the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle, but your clan and mine have been enemies for 1,000 years. Recently, we had to form a temporary alliance, but before that, we were always ready to destroy each other whenever we had the chance. Well, it was strange, especially your personality. Was it strange? As he asked, confused, Jean felt that there was still a trace of his old self. He even wondered if Baradin was just messing with him. But that was all. Even without Yuria's verification, the current Baradin is not the person Jean knew. Yes, you were strange from the first time we met. Now I'm even more curious. Can you tell me more? No, I can't. At Jin's firm refusal, Baradin shrugged as if he were disappointed. But after a few more minutes, Baradin subtly released Valeria's seal. If you're not going to tell me, I see no need to be so generous. What great generosity. It just makes things a bit uncomfortable. But even without you, I can maintain the seal. Besides, your actions don't even align with the purpose of opening the Holy Land. Although I have no doubt I can maintain the seal, there's always the possibility that something unexpected might happen. I wonder how your clan would react in that case. You really have a way with words that is quite annoying. Baradin put his hand back on Valeria's seal, but he showed no change in expression despite the uncomfortable situation. The path leading to the Holy Land beyond the door had a strange landscape. The ordinary corridor made of stone and various metals became more blurry as he ventured into it. Like the vague form of Orgel's body, it wasn't a landscape that could be seen in the human world. There wasn't an independent entrance to the subspace, but at some point, I started to feel the boundaries of the world becoming blurry. The colors and textures that made up the space left traces as if washed by watercolors. How much further do we have to go? I can't tell you. It's not difficult to measure the time myself, but is it a secret? No, it's because the time it takes to reach the Holy Land is different each time. It depends on how welcoming the Holy Land is to the three of us. As mysterious as its great name suggests. The last time I came, I heard it took 15 days. It was just before I completely lost my memory. So it could take 15 days, but there must be a reason why we didn't prepare extra food. Yes, since the remains of the corridor disappeared. We don't feel hunger in the Holy Land. Instead, the more we walk, the lighter our bodies feel. As he spoke, Jean felt his stamina recovering rapidly since crossing the boundary. His mind, which had been confused by maintaining the seal, was also much clearer. Still, Jean wanted to calculate the time by measuring his steps. But, strangely, as his body and mind became healthier, the concept of time became more tenuous. Even roughly calculating that each step was a second was difficult. After several attempts, Jean resumed counting a second. Is it because there's a time gap between the Holy Land and the human world, like in other dimensions? It's a strange feeling. Therefore, Jean couldn't know how long it took, but the two soon discovered a distant green light. It's residual energy. It was the same energy that Jean had glimpsed through Orgel's steel door. In the dark and blurry landscape, only the residual energy shone intensely. We have arrived. The two stood in front of the green energy and placed their hands on it at the same time, as if they had made a promise. Suddenly, as if the whole world had brightened, the surroundings turned blue in an instant. The Holy Land from a few hundred years ago, that Orgel had shown, was no different from this. A green and bright sea or a desert landscape. Now release the seal on Hister. As soon as Hister recovers, we will leave the Holy Land. Anxiety arose when Jean reached the Holy Land and tried to break the seal. What if the residual energy of the Holy Land had no effect on Valeria? What if there was no way to reseal her? In the midst of that confusion, Jean realized that Valeria, within the seal, had shuddered. Valeria started reacting to the residual energy of the Holy Land even before the seal was broken. The pale seal was already turning green. You come all this way and worry about everything, Baradin said, as if he had seen Jin's intentions. As you said, since your clan and mine are mortal enemies, there's a reason we are trying to save Hister even by opening the Holy Land to the enemy, Runcandle. You know it better than anyone, right? It sounds like you're going to deal with me here right after Hister's recovery. There were those who insisted on doing so. Are they Octavia and Cadden? No, mostly the elders. Jean came alone with Valeria, who was wounded, deep into enemy territory. The fact that only I can deal with Rosa makes my shoulders feel a bit heavy. Kinselo still has a variable called Orgel's recovery, but doesn't Zippel have any hidden moves? Yes, they do. I didn't know. I would be happy to hear that the enemy has hidden powers. Please tell me what it's about. I suppose it's a question that needs answering. Facing the public enemy. It's the manipulation of history. However, it's a means that can never be achieved without its ally, Hister. During the first meeting of the Temporary Alliance, Ronald said that Zippel could face Rosa through history manipulation. So, in fact, it's crazy that Jean came to this place at this moment. It was a decision that Jean would never have made if not for Valeria or his companions. Jean can't escape from here with the help of the Red Owl or Mort. If Zippel doesn't keep its promise, Jean would inevitably be in mortal danger. But my father was directly against it. Aren't you curious about the reason? It's probably because he has to keep using me to deal with Rosa. Zippel and Kinselo didn't want to lose Jean since he is the only one immune to chaos at this moment. That's why even the high-level staff of each faction came to support them in the Cauldron Snowfield. As Jean ventured deep into enemy territory, the only thing he believed in was this fact and his own strength. Exactly, and I thought the same. It's unlikely we can complete the manipulation of history through Hister faster than the moment the evil god fully awakens. At this moment, you are definitely more important than Hister to our clan. Whether it was a lie or the truth, Baradin didn't seem to have any reason to hide anything about the manipulation of history now. I suppose it doesn't sound attractive that I am the most important asset of Zippel. If someone else were the guide, they would have attacked me at least once during this part. Jean began to unseal Valeria slowly. It wasn't because he believed everything Baradin said, but because he judged it best to heal her as planned and leave. And Jean Runcandle. Yes. We made a promise before I lost my memory. Promise. Once, I promised that even if you came to our family unannounced, I would spare your life at least once. Be grateful that this is a banquet hall. Haha. Aren't you too straightforward? I know your father spared my uncle. Since we're at it, let me make a promise too. Even if you come to the Zippel banquet unannounced someday, I won't harm you. That conversation took place at the banquet of the Unique Bridge, just before Jean became the provisional flag bearer. Baradin didn't remember the conversation, but the remaining diary notes did. It was written that I would spare your life once even if you caused terrorism in my family, so I couldn't help but wonder about our relationship. I said before that the old you was a weirdo. It wasn't a time when we were particularly close, we weren't even friends. I suppose at that time I was the only one who considered you a friend. Anyway, if I tell you now that I'll keep that promise, would it ease your mind a bit? Jean suppressed his bitter expression at those words and replied, I don't believe it, but it doesn't seem bad. When the mana of the ice seal disappeared, the speed at which the residual energy penetrated Valeria accelerated. Valeria was immediately enveloped in a bright, shimmering bubble, and her recovery was so rapid that it could be observed with the naked eye. Even after seeing Valeria writhing and exhaling slowly, Jean couldn't help but feel anxious. What if her sudden recovery suddenly stopped? He felt as if a stone was weighing on his chest. Baradin, on the other hand, found Jin's reaction interesting. It seems that in the past I was very close to Jean Runcandle, seeing that I still want to say useless things. Since he regained consciousness, Baradin had become a cold person, unlike before. He didn't develop a cruel or horrifying personality, but he lost all emotional response to most things in the world. He no longer had feelings of affection for friendship, family, or loved ones. The only thing Baradin had left now was a blind sense of purpose, the rebirth of Zippel. Strangely, Baradin didn't mind talking with Jean. In fact, he found it pleasant. Jean Runcandle, I've heard that you hardly have any weaknesses in any situation. What do you mean? I can see the worry and anxiety on your face at the possibility that Hister won't recover. Could she be your lover? Could be. That's a strange answer. Have you broken up? Jean didn't hear Baradin's next question, as he was too focused on watching Valeria. Fortunately, her recovery was accelerating. Baradin didn't care and took a crystal bottle out of his pocket and filled it with iridescent bubbles. The bubbles in the bottle shone with beautiful colors like opals. It wasn't clear what kind of reward this trace of mana would bring to Zippel, but no matter the cost, it wasn't more important than Valeria's life for the Jean and Vamil alliance. Ah! Finally, Valeria opened her eyes and took a deep breath. Jean hugged her without realizing it. He almost shouted her name. Jean. Jean Runcandle. Yes, it's me. How, ugh. You're not fully healed yet. It's okay to wait and talk slowly. Valeria looked at her chest. She briefly felt the pain of the moment when she was stabbed with Lunch's sword, as memories flooded in like a torrent. Memories. With the feeling that her head was about to split, the memories of the moment she fell came rushing back. Neru? Is Neru okay? He's fine. Neru was protecting you. Thank God. Valeria's gaze fell on Baradin, who was holding a crystal bottle with the trace of her mana. She regained her usual cold demeanor, which hadn't been affected by her recent awakening. Jean, I've recovered. We should leave here as soon as possible. Valeria knew that the power of this land, the Holy Land of Zippel, had healed her. She had seen the record about the Holy Land in the recently found Hister Succession Temple. The records weren't detailed, but they stated that the Holy Land could heal a fully mana-imbued body. Since Valeria sealed herself, she had hoped that Jean and his companions would rescue her and bring her here. Although others might not have been able to, she had a feeling that Jean could achieve it, and that intuition turned out to be correct. Demon King Orgel, Jean probably obtained information about this place from him. He was the one who informed my ancestors about this place. Valeria was unaware of the current situation. She knew nothing of the great battle that took place in the Garden of Swords, nor that the three main forces had formed a temporary alliance because of it, nor that Jean was the only opponent of Rosa. It seems the three forces have learned the power of the Garden of Swords. That's why they formed a temporary alliance, and Zippel opened the Holy Land. However, Valeria quickly deduced all these situations. Yes. There was much to hear outside. Jean also didn't want to stay in the Holy Land a second longer now that Valeria had recovered. Most importantly, the only thing the residual energy of the Holy Land had fully healed was Valeria's wound. The chaos energy remaining in the healed wound hadn't been cleansed, so they had to return to Tychon and use the purification device. Before leaving, I have one more condition, Jean Runcandle. At the sudden request, Jean calmly met Baradin's gaze. I didn't know you were so good at quickly losing trust, Baradin Zippel. Are you going to threaten me after closing the deal? You know what I'm going to ask, but you're sharpening your blade. If it's the deal with Fire Dragon Cadden, then I'll accept. Fire Dragon Cadden. He has been exposed to enormous chaos due to the first total attack on the Garden of Swords and the battle in the Cauldron Snowfield. Since the opening negotiations of the Holy Land, Jean expected Zippel to demand his healing. Yes, I believe you can take Caddenim with you when you go to Tychon. Understood. The exit from the Holy Land was the same as the first. If you go back the way you came, the landscape of the human world gradually darkens after crossing the border at a certain point. After passing through the corridor, the door appeared, which is the entrance to the Holy Land. And beyond the door, unlike before when they entered the Holy Land, there were numerous people waiting. They were magicians dressed in white robes and holding swords. Living golem, or perhaps modified humans who could be a form of magical swordsmen. The number of people was endless, and no matter how far they looked, they couldn't see the end. They are openly announcing that they are fostering the living golem magical swordsman. Are they trying to intimidate us now? Each of them had a significant amount of mana and aura, unlike Baradin and everyone else they had encountered so far. If their combat skills were at the same level, even Jean wouldn't be able to handle them all, especially if he had to protect Valeria in that situation. They are not just dolls with energy. They are completely different from those who are not trained, even in breathing. Another strange thing was that their physique was completely the same, as if the prophet had cloned Joshua. When Jean approached the nearest living golem and tried to remove its hood, Baradin blocked his hand. Look at what we promised to show you, Jean Runcandle. I have a feeling that the face under that hood will be the same as yours. Do I have such a common face? My diary, which no longer exists, is full of compliments about my good looks. I don't know what your intention is. It was strange from the beginning that you didn't hide the fact that you were reaching the level of a magical swordsman. Think of it as sharing power in the position of having a common enemy. If there were so many living golem magical swordsmen, they surely could have actively participated in the first total attack on the Garden of Swords. However, the living golems sent by Zippel's fleet at that time were incomparably inferior to them and were reinforced through chaos control. The same happened with the living golems that died in the Cauldron Snowfield. Jean was able to figure out the reason intuitively. These living golems seemed to be able to exert their strength only near the Holy Land. That was the only reason there were no living golem magical swordsmen during the total attack. Even Cadden and Octavia participated directly, so at that time, Zippel had put almost all of its exportable power. Baradin nodded as if there was no need to hide. Yes, we are looking for a way to take them out of the Holy Land. Right now, the moment they leave the vicinity of the Holy Land, they stop functioning like puppets with cut strings. It means death. But why do you feel uncomfortable? Do you think being a magical swordsman is a privilege only for your family? Jean shook his head. No, it's because I'm your friend, said Jean as if he had nothing to hide. I see, said Baradin as he walked. But you should have said it in the past tense. You and I will not come close again. Jean and Valeria followed them from behind, and all the living golems' gazes followed them like machines. The number of living golems didn't decrease even as they walked outside the Holy Land for a long time. Finally, they reached the area where Jean first arrived, and Ronald was waiting with Kozek just like when he arrived. By then, the living golems had disappeared. Ronald was surprised to see Jean return and looked at the hourglass. How much time has passed? Brother Ronald. 1 day. Only 1 day has passed. The Holy Land has been very welcoming to Hister. Maybe it was welcoming to Jean Runcandle. Father is looking for you. I also thought of seeing him. He may be curious about this. While showing the crystal bottle to Ronald, Baradin turned around and extended his hand to Jean. After looking at his hand for a few seconds, Jean shook it. Goodbye, Jean Runcandle. With this, I have fulfilled the promise I made before losing my memory. Wait for me, Baradin. Jean didn't say those words out loud and let go of the handshake. I will take you to Tychon, Sir Jean. All right, Ronald Zippel. Back in the windowless cabin, Jean and Valeria sat across from each other and talked about the past. Valeria thanked him several times, and for Jean, seeing her like this in the present life was both unfamiliar and pleasant. As expected, a temporary alliance was formed. It must have been an inevitable choice to face the Garden of Swords. Then there's one thing we must let them know before leaving the ship. Let them know? To Zippel. The Imperial family betrayed Zippel. And perhaps your friend, the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle, might be in danger. Valeria Hister had finally discovered the location of Timar's 5th tomb somewhere in the snowfield of Kaldarn. Just 2 months before Jean returned from La Perosa. Thanks to the use of record magic to track Lunch's movements, Valeria was able to uncover the messages left behind. And just after Valeria departed for the snowfield of Kaldron with Neru, she was pursued by 3 forces: Runcandle, Zippel, and the Imperial family. From Runcandle, the Black Knight led the Knights of the Black Sword Association, and Ronald led the pursuit group from Zippel. They occasionally crossed paths with Valeria, but that was all. But it was the Imperial family that put Valeria in the greatest danger. Valeria was desperately pursued for 2 months and couldn't contact Tychon even once. All because of the Imperial family. Are there such outstanding pursuers in the Imperial family? Even the best forces from the Garden of Swords and Zippel couldn't find Valeria. Even though I am from the Special Forces, even the Special Forces or the Imperial Guards can't compare to the 1st Division of the Black Sword Association or the Black Knight. Even if they were strengthened by the power of chaos or maginization, I'm not sure. The same can happen with Rosa and Zippel's subordinates, said Valkaz and Elisa. Jean was telling his companions the things he heard from Valeria during the journey to Tychon. Some exceptional figures among the pursuers from the Imperial family were knights from the Garden of Swords. Do you mean the Imperial family betrayed Zippel? That's right. The people who just transferred the eastern part of the empire to Zippel. It could have been the smokescreen they gave to the east, or it could have been that they changed their stance after recognizing the power of the Garden of Swords. I think it's the first, Sir Valkaz. For some reason, I have a feeling that the Imperial family may have contacted Runcandle much earlier than we think. Since they possess a part of the first Patriarch's body, they could have used it as a bargaining chip. Valeria herself hadn't figured out when exactly the Imperial family had betrayed Zippel. It wasn't an especially important issue. From what we've seen, Timar Runcandle's body itself is just a collection of ancient magic information. Since the deal went wrong, we didn't have a chance to analyze it properly. The words Jean heard from Kinselo while sharing the spacetime device. Jean, you said you saw a large number of living golem sword magicians in Zippel's Holy Land. Yes, Quicantal Nim. We can't rule out the possibility that they shared the left arm with both the Garden of Swords and Zippel. Maybe that's why Zippel didn't realize the betrayal of the Imperial family at all. He can't rest even after 1,000 years. His body is being torn apart and sent here and there. It's almost a relief that Murakan isn't here. What does it mean that the Sword Emperor is in danger? Valeria said she killed some of the Imperial pursuers she encountered and examined their records. Among them, this content was found. Runcandle gave the monster, to Aaron Vermont of the Vermont imperial family, to kill Dante Hyran, the Sword Emperor. Aaron Vermont ranked 30th in the imperial family succession before Amir's death. Neither Elisa nor I know the details about him, but he wasn't a notable figure. He seems to have been Runcandle's main contact. Kashmir had little contact with Amir and Aaron during his stay at the imperial palace. There was hardly any chance of meeting due to the difference in rank, and in the first place, the imperial family had a strong tendency to hide as much as possible even among members of the same imperial family. Since it means he's practically a new person, we have to start gathering information about him from scratch. Don't worry, my lord. I'll find out everything about that Vermont guy, even the color of his underwear. By the way, are you referring to the Knights of Runcandle affected by chaos? It's strange that the name of the person who gave the monster isn't mentioned. There's one person that immediately comes to mind, said Jean, narrowing his eyes. Joshua Runcandle. I have a strong hunch that it's him. Young master. That damn dog. Ahem. The despicable bastard. Did Rosa readmit him? Jean smiled at Gilly's furious reaction. Since the rebellion succeeded while my father was absent, there's no reason to abandon a well-behaved dog. Although he was like trash before, he might have changed now. Or rather, he might have been forced to change through chaos. It's a dirty and depraved story. Just thinking about him and Rosa makes my heart ache so much it's hard to bear. But if it's Joshua, is there any reason why his name doesn't appear in the record magic? Well, it could be because he accepted chaos and became an entirely new existence. Of course, I can't be sure. It's just a hunch. Anyway, it seems there are 3 things we need to start right away. The first is to search the Sword Emperor Castle, and the second is to rescue the remaining allies within Huphester. And finally, should we enter the 6th tomb Valeria found? Jean nodded at Quicantle's conclusion. That's right. It seems I need to personally take care of all 3. The remaining important allies within Huphester were Vin Blanche and Pecan Minche, the godsmith he had contracted with. Additionally, there were several individuals presumed not to be on Rosa's side, such as Petro, Jin's butler, and Heinz, Siren's butler, and the nanny and family of the siblings. Several people presumed not to have joined Rosa, and the natives of Cologne in Luna's territory. However, there weren't many individuals who could be of practical help, aside from high-ranking officials like Vin Branch. But even if they weren't a source of power, Jean couldn't leave them alone. That is not the way of alliance between Jean and Vamil. Above all, the Garden of Swords didn't seem to care about them right now for some reason, but it was still unknown when Rosa might use them as hostages. No, it's probably better for you to stay out of the rescue mission within Huphester. I think so too, young master. I think so too, young master. Jin's companions unanimously opposed his re-entry into Huphester. It's almost a miracle you returned safely from the snowfield of Caldron this time. You are the leader of the Vamil Alliance, the center of the Temporary Alliance, and the only opponent to Rosa. So until the day we decide to go against Rosa, don't even think about going to Huphester yourself. When Jean was about to respond, Mary put her hand on his shoulder. Yes, younger brother. I know you're the strongest among us, and that's why you try to take on more burden than you should. But that doesn't mean you have to get involved in everything. Even our father didn't do that. Well, maybe he couldn't. Elder sister. I'll gather a team to rescue the infiltrated in Huphester. I'm saying this in advance in case you're worried. But in the process, even if it's elder brother Dyphus, I won't lose my cool even if I see that elder brother Dyphus has become like elder sister Luncia. I'll ask for help from the Nameless. Although almost all the personnel are looking for elder sister Yona, I'm sure some will help. Jean was unable to persist against the stubborn attitude of his siblings and companions. All right, since I have to move personally for the matter of the Sword Emperor Castle and Timar's tombs, I thought it was too much to do it myself, but I guess it's time to say it out loud. Do you plan to go immediately to the Sword Emperor Castle? Yes. I plan to go once Valeria wakes up and I hear the rest of the story. Valeria had lost consciousness due to the reigning chaos on the way back and hadn't been able to communicate the information about the 6th tomb to Jean. I see. I miss Dante a lot. Since returning from La Ferosa, Jean hadn't yet met with Dante. This was due to the constant incidents occurring since his return. Moreover, just as Jean had personally intervened in almost everything in the Vamal alliance in the Empire, Dante played that role. Currently, except for Dante, there were hardly any individuals of the superhuman level left in the Empire. Since the Empire's best talents were lost during the time of Gleek subjugation, Dante had a lot of responsibility to take on. Maybe because the shock he received from Baradin was great, the mere thought of meeting Dante soon comforted Jean, even if it wasn't for a good reason. Even if Dante faced some crisis, Jean trusted he could handle it. I hope I can meet a friend and clear my head without problems for a while. That's right, young master. If the person in the record Valeria found is at that level, no matter what they do, they can't threaten the young master. Of course, Gilly wasn't really worried, but her words weren't insincere either. Simply, it was difficult for Jin's companions to imagine Jean in crisis because of Joshua. Someone found the meeting room. It was Qual and Valeria. Qual had been waiting in front of Valeria's room in the hospital, piling up cigarette butts like a mountain until she woke up, and had brought her with him. Ah! Suddenly, Qual hugged Jean and burst into tears. No one had imagined that rough and unrefined engineer could cry so miserably. Good job. Well done. You really saved our Valeria. Jin's companions already recognized this fact. They consoled him for a while, sympathizing with Qual's tearful appearance. Valeria also didn't say anything despite widening her eyes at Qual's reaction. Huhuhuck. Even the chaos has completely disappeared. I couldn't tell you everything since I lost consciousness due to the chaos. Jean. How far did I tell you? It was the location of the sixth tomb. Ah, that's right. The place where the sixth tomb of Timar exists is not a region, Jean. It's not a region? Do you mean the subspace? Valeria responded by nodding her head. Yes, it's a subspace. However, it's not a region, but a subspace that exists within a certain sword. Is the subspace that exists within the sword? To explain that, first, I need to tell you why Neru and I were able to enter the fifth tomb. Valeria is neither a contractor of Sodaret nor adept at handling chaos like the daughter of Halurim. Nor did she receive guidance from anyone as in the Wantaramo forest. However, she did not force her entry as Zippel or other factions might have done. Originally, she shouldn't have been able to enter the tomb. You must be tired because of the chaos energy, Valeria. You mentioned it before. You obtained an item related to the ancient run candle in the cat god temple with the help of the cat tribe. I've already told you about it. Did I mention what the item was? You said it was a handkerchief. A handkerchief. It might seem like a trivial item, but that handkerchief held countless stories from 1,000 years ago. Yes, it was the handkerchief that belonged to one of the 10 great knights of Old Run Candle. That's why the tomb responded to the handkerchief and opened the door even without shadow force or guidance. The record and history left in the handkerchief became the key. However, it was a one-time measure. Since the stories in the handkerchief were too distant and faint, Valeria planned to keep it safe and analyze it after advancing her achievements in record magic. But as soon as the door opened, the handkerchief disappeared, and Valeria still regrets that fact. In that case, the prophet might have opened the door using a method similar to yours. That's possible. She must have opened it at least twice. Paidler Runcandle's fate, the original guardian of the tomb, fell upon your second sister. Anyway, I figured out how to enter the next tomb inside it before your sister replaced Paidler. Unlike the other tombs Jean had found so far, the fifth one had a clue leading directly to the next one. In the fifth tomb, not only was Paidler Runcandle there, but also a record of a person named Bale, the owner of the handkerchief. That was the reason the tomb reacted to the handkerchief. Bale? However, Bale's records are too vague, so I only confirmed that the sixth tomb was hidden in his sword and the approximate location where the sword was originally hidden. It's in the Black Sea, but the possibility that it is still there is not very high. At that moment, Jean felt a strong hit on the back of his neck. Wait, Valeria. What? The handkerchief you got reacted to the fifth tomb, which belonged to Baal. And the sixth tomb is a subspace within Baal's sword, and the place where the sword is hidden is in the Black Sea. That's what it means, right? You definitely said Baal, right? Yes. Jean blinked for a few seconds, and Valeria looked around, shrugging. The other companions didn't seem to understand it either. I think I've already found that sword. What? Hito, your sword. The sword is shining and doing something. The sky has responded to our prayers. I am also looking, milady. What on earth is this? That sword seems to be the key to opening the tombs. Where did you get that sword? When I was young, I got it by killing a monster in the Black Sea. A conversation between Sandara, Hito, and Jean in the Cauldron snowfield. At that moment, Jean infused shadow energy into Hito's sword and naturally confirmed the word Baal written on the sword's body. The current owner of the sword, Hito, also thought it was the name of the sword, so only Jean knew. But that was the name of one of the 10 great knights of the ancient Runcandle. Jean now seemed to understand the reason why Murakan suffered as soon as he saw Baal in the Soda Desert, and the reason why Baal could serve as the key to the fifth tomb. I don't think I've told you how I entered the tomb because I didn't have much time either. That sword currently belongs to Hito, the guardian of the White Knight Tower. I didn't know it was a stroke of luck, but the rescue process was more reckless than I expected. When it comes to things related to you, luck seems to follow you strangely. And didn't you say yourself before that there aren't many people as lucky as you? Oh! For some reason, such admiration burst out simultaneously among his companions. Jean and Valeria didn't give it much importance and continued the conversation. I was thinking of taking a few hours off and heading straight to the Black Sea, but it saved me a lot of trouble. Sandra Zippel and Hito seem to be very good friends of yours. Probably only Sandra Zippel, Miss Valeria. But that muscular butler absolutely obeys Sandra Zippel's words. So I think we can call Sandra and examine the sword. Somehow it feels like Jet is referring to you as a piece of trash taking advantage of someone's love interest. What? Miss Valeria? You shouldn't misunderstand my words like that. My lord seems to be quite friendly with you. I can't call Hito and Sandra immediately. Our side has asked a lot of Zippel recently, so we'll contact them in a few days. In the meantime, I think it would be perfect to go to the Sword Emperor Castle. Oh, my lord. If you say that, I feel a bit embarrassed. Even the bad side of our Lord Jean is cool. Jet, Enya, I'm not just asking for the sword. I think it's better to make those two our people, if possible. Jean saw what happened to Baradin. Jean was convinced that if Sandra Zippel stayed with Zippel, it would inevitably happen in the not-too-distant future. He wanted to erase the surname Zippel from her. Valeria felt uncomfortable hearing Jin's proposal to make Zippel his ally, and she expressed her opinion in a calm tone. Do what you want. Do as you please. Just don't forget that someday. All the Zippels in the world will surely die by my hands. Valeria stood up from her seat. I need to go inside and rest for a while. Mr. Quall, let's resume our research in the afternoon. Jean brought a lot of data from La Ferosa, and since there was a singularity that the Red Owl was connected to that world, we will be busy again. Doesn't Miss Valeria get tired? She said she had less work to do because there was no need to go to the Black Sea. But now she's going to work again right away. It's not that she doesn't get tired, but that she can't afford to be tired. The resentment for the ruined clan and the murdered relatives is embedded in her. Jean didn't say those words out loud. Then, I must also prepare to go to the Sword Emperor Castle. As soon as Jean left the meeting room, his companions naturally looked toward the door he had disappeared through. They look a bit alike, don't they? I think so too, old Valkas. The Lord exudes a more human feeling. They seem like people who learned from the same master or father for a long time. Then, I'm thinking of creating a Valeria fan club. Something like an extra job. Sometimes you are scary, Enya. How can I hear that from Faye? Let's get to work. From now on, Jet will investigate Aaron Vermont, and Lady Mary, Sir Haytona and Daytona. You can speak comfortably, King Kashmir. Yes, speak freely. What kind of language is that to use with the king, you all? Are you willing to throw away your dignity as flag-bearer just because we lost the Garden of Swords? Can I take on the role of Mu and An? No, elder sister. We will correct ourselves. We decided to become new people, elder sister. I will be watching you. Go and tell Cosmos to fix the ship. We will leave in a few days. And bring me a list of the recovered knights. Yes, elder sister. April 1st, 1803. Wow! Hoo-hoo! 2 children, whose hair and eyes were dyed black with cosmetics and disguised tools from the Golden Snow tribe, shouted in excitement. In fact, one of them was a dragon who had lived for hundreds of years, but outwardly looked like an ordinary child, caught in the excitement of the journey. Latri and Yuria. Jean decided to take the 2 on this trip to the Sword Emperor Castle. In case of emergency, Quicantle also accompanied them as a protector. It's not just the children, one by dragon standards. Everyone had disguised themselves for the first time in a long while. Jean and Quicantle had dark blue hair and played the roles of dragon siblings. Jean Appa, Miss Quicantle, the Red Owl is amazing. We arrived at the Empire simultaneously like a transfer gate. Right? It's good that there's something that seems amazing to AZ Mills contractor. It seems more surprising to me that Miss Quicantle chose this place as our destination. This log cabin, it brings back so many memories. A serene log cabin nestled in the middle of a forest outside Vermont's capital. This was the starting point where Jean changed the fate of Yuria and Enya during his early days as a provisional flag-bearer. It was a house with the same structure as the one where Murakan and Quicantle lived a long time ago. Yuria had only heard about this place through words. She didn't go out much from Tychon, of course, when she met Jean, and even now, as AZ Mills contractor, her special nature made her very cautious in all aspects of her life. Memories? Well, I can see some solid emotions, like regret or nostalgia, in every corner of this log cabin. Yuria, let's set that aside for now. It would be better to go and eat your favorite seafood stew before going to the Sword Emperor Castle. Okay, Miss Quicantle. Jean Appa, do you want to eat only seafood stew? Can't we eat and play until nightfall? Yuria's innocence was cute and pitiful. Yuria, you are the only princess of the Vamal Alliance and the Free State of Tychon. All of a sudden? It means if you want to have fun, the leader of the Empire will come to see you. From then on, the party truly stirred the center of Vermont and spent money joyfully. Although the world was gloomy due to the remnants of Gleek and Rosa, the capital of Vermont still had vitality, just like before the era changed. It was proof that Dante was doing a good job ruling. Jean contemplated the peace of the land his friend had protected and nurtured with a proud heart. By nightfall, when the second seafood stew was served in a new seafood restaurant, no one was left in the restaurant except them. Even the waiters and the owner had left. It's really like Jean Appa said, "Sir Dante is here, right?" said Yuria looking at Dante, who had just opened the door. Jean and Dante smiled at each other without saying a word for a while. It was a reunion after about 3 years. How did you find out about this place? Dante? I heard a report that a craftsman named Paul Gray Mick and his group were making checks all over the center of the capital. So I hurried to see them. Jean smiled. Sit down, Dante. The food just came out. The friend Jean hadn't seen in a long time still looked the same. The handshake was even firmer than before, and Jean felt as if he could sense the last 3 years through it. It's been a while, my friend. You've undoubtedly grown stronger. I thought you'd be a bit rusty since you've been so busy, but now you've turned into a man of iron. Dante. If I couldn't even do this, I wouldn't be qualified to be the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle. I was so busy when I returned that I couldn't come to see you earlier. No one will be unaware of the great things you've done once you finish your closed-door training. I myself was busy until a few days ago, so don't worry. The two looked at each other without speaking for a while. Although they hadn't spent time together in the past 3 years, both had persevered in their respective positions with a single thought. Even without saying it, they felt how hard and deep the past was for the other. Oh, I'm late with my greetings. Princess, Miss Quicantle and Sir Latry. I am Dante Hyran, the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle. Why are you being so awkward, Sir Dante? It's not like it's the first time we've met. That's right. Are you telling us to stop eating? Dante scratched his neck, embarrassed by Yuria and Quicantle's response. I wanted to formally greet the princess once. It seems I went a bit overboard. Bubble, bubble. The seafood stew was boiling. The meal began when Yuria placed the seafood soup in an empty bowl and served it first to Dante. After Jin's return, Dante already knew most of what had happened. This was because every time an incident occurred, Kashmir sent someone to inform him. I see. So Baradin has completely forgotten us due to being a victim of such a dirty experiment. How could they do that to the next patriarch and his son? However, Dante learned about Baradin's condition for the first time today. While Dante trembled with rage, Jean patted his shoulder to calm him. He already knew that Baradin was in a desperate state, but hearing the situation through Jin's words filled his heart with venom. Zipple, we will surely save our friend from the perpetrators of this artificial catastrophe one day. Yes, we will, Dante. Until we destroy the evil god, I will suppress my anger. Like you, I will use them until I can and then crush them mercilessly. Just as Jean learned the value of righteousness from Ron and Dante, Dante was also learning from Jean the necessity of mastery. If it had been the previous Dante, he would never have shaken hands with those who turned his friend into a miserable experiment, even if it meant dying. But now it's different. He had many lives hanging on his shoulders. As the Lord of the Sword Emperor Castle and Regent of the Empire, the world he viewed was completely different from when he was just a young patriarch. Sometimes he had to use his enemies, sometimes he had to take a step back, and sometimes he had to do things he didn't want to do. Otherwise, he couldn't save the countless families and people who only looked up to him and the world. Dante, you're becoming more like Lord Ron. Dante's face always had the look of a good friend, but it was clearly changing. He had begun the path of the Emperor, not just a young patriarch. The Emperor who is stricter with himself and will never fall. Jean was proud of Dante's transformation, and it was precisely what Ron had wished for in life. His grandson, who was always ready to fight against evil with his life, was undoubtedly adorable, but he always worried about him. Jean spoke to Ron in his heart. It seems you can now enjoy watching him in peace. By the way, Jean. Yes. I've been wondering since earlier, why did you come in disguise? It doesn't seem like it was just to entertain the princess. There are people in the imperial family who want to kill you. Unless Zipple sent someone as capable as you, it would be impossible. Zipple has no reason to do that now, right? It wasn't Zipple. It was the Garden of Swords that provided the assassin. Dante's pupils narrowed. The Garden of Swords? Yes, the imperial family betrayed Zipple and sided with Rosa. That's what Valeria confirmed. Did you know? I'm ashamed to say I had no idea. The betrayed party was the same. Zipple also didn't know that the imperial family had sided with the Garden of Swords. Even after Jean informed Zipple of the betrayal, Zipple did not recklessly purge the imperial family. Given the circumstances, they first had to assess how much information they had given to Runcandle. Valeria said she believes you're in danger. We suspect that Joshua is the one who provided the assassin to the imperial family. With the strongest knight skills enhanced by chaos and the prophet's abilities, it wouldn't be a dream story for the imperial family to assassinate me. The reason the Garden of Swords is trying to eliminate me is probably because they find my presence annoying since I'm helping you. That's why I came in disguise after a long time. I also brought our princess here. Of course, Jean didn't bring Yuria into this dangerous situation just to give her some pleasant memories. Are you planning to find the assassin through the princess's abilities? Exactly. Dante was about to express his concern about bringing the young princess into such a dangerous situation but stopped when he saw Jean. He wondered if Yuria could be in danger no matter who the enemy sent, given that Jean was there with her. I think you wanted to say something, said Jean. I realized it might not be a big problem. Unless there are assassins or old swordsmen from Runcandle involved, replied Dante. Even if it's Sir Paidler, Yuria won't get hurt. Because you're here too, said Jean. Then what should we do now? There is very little information aside from the fact that the Garden of Swords provided an assassin to Aaron Vermont. So, call all available personnel to the palace and start with the lower-ranking ones. Are you suggesting we call everyone just to ask if there's an informant? Jean nodded. It's the only way we can investigate with the princess present. Yuria, Latrinim, Miss Quicantle, and I have to attend the imperial meeting. As it's a meeting of the Empire's top ministers, we need a pretext to attend. I was thinking, Jean, I'm no different from the sole absolute ruler of the Empire. Not even the late Emir Vermont had more power than me. Therefore, we don't need a pretext. All the Empire's subjects should come running to me when I call. Oh, I forgot for a second that you had changed. There was no need to invent a pretext. I'm curious. What pretext did you have in mind? I was going to say that the dragons you rescued from the contaminated area came to repay their debt and asked for your help, since you've completed many missions without knights. For what you've been trying to think, there's a lack of plausibility. Dragons that didn't belong to any force are extremely rare in the world right now. Well, I'm glad we don't need it. But if anyone ever asks me about your origin, I'll have to say it, said Dante. If the traitor is in the capital and the fact is revealed immediately, then there's no need to lie, replied Jean. The meal had ended. Outside, the carriage was ready, and the group headed straight to the palace. Tell all the subjects waiting in the capital to gather in the palace's first conference room within 2 hours. Everyone except ordinary knights and magicians on duty. All 10th rank subjects as well. It's an emergency summons. Tell them that those who are late will be severely punished. Yes, Your Highness the Regent. In an instant, orders spread throughout the capital. Has the Regent ever summoned us this way? He told us to work tirelessly for the Empire and the people, even to the point of sacrificing ourselves. But now he asks us to leave our duties to our deputies and come here. What's happening? What nonsense is this in the middle of the night? I'm very nervous. Could it be that he's overthrowing the Crown Prince and plans to ascend the throne himself? Even with the young voice of Crown Prince Curon pleading for some mercy, this can't be worse. If the Lord of Sword Emperor Castle ascends the throne, we'll truly die from overwork for sure. Whatever happens, let's prostrate ourselves flat. If we show any signs of reluctance, it's over. You all know that, right? What happened to Baron Margall last time when he complained about having too much work? The fearful servants clung to their melted soy sauce, while the servants who admired Dante headed to the imperial palace with determination. This is an urgent call from His Highness the Regent. It's clear that something important has happened. Everyone, don't show signs of exhaustion. No one in the Empire can suffer more than His Highness the Regent. Carriages and horses constantly entered the palace without a moment's rest. Before 2 hours had passed, more than 1,000 servants had gathered in the conference room. Has everyone arrived? The scene the servants saw was Dante sitting on the throne and 4 unfamiliar faces standing behind him. No one noticed that the group was in disguise. Yes, Your Highness the Regent. Yes. Despite the large number of servants present, they did not dare to exchange glances with Dante. Jean saw many with unfriendly faces after rolling their eyes for no reason. It seems no one questions Dante about our identities. He is as strict as Runcandle in the past when my father was hospitalized in the Garden of Swords. But on that side, it seems they expect something. In the heavy atmosphere where it was difficult even to breathe, there were some groups that expressed their excitement carefreely. They were ministers and knights of high ran, and the reason their eyes shone was because of Quicantle, who was disguised behind Dante. Could it be that the Lord Patriarch has finally found his lover? Maybe he's going to present his lover and his family, or maybe not. No, it's possible. It's not like he's urgently gathering his subordinates for personal reasons. Unfortunately, they soon became sullen and straightened their gaze. The Knights of Hyran knew very well how lonely and desperate Dante's moment was, so they eagerly awaited the appearance of that lover who could be a bit of his solace. Dante stood up. "You're all busy, so I'll be direct. I gathered you all here because there's a traitor within the Empire." "Ah! How can this be?" "Do not open your mouth until I allow it. Let's finish quickly and return to contributing to the Empire's stabilization. From now on, you can only answer my questions with a yes or no. Now I will ask the first question." Dante looked at his subordinates with fiercely severe eyes. "Is there anyone among you who has plans to harm me or knows someone with such plans?" "No." The servants responded, and Dante awaited Uria's signal. After studying the subordinates for a few minutes, Uria gently tapped Dante's back 7 times with her finger. That meant 7 of them had lied.